Tennessee's basketball team will get a number 1 seed if they beat Alabama. Are you banking on that, Will West?
No, I am not. I think you're in the driver's seat for it, but it still matters what happens in the SEC championship and other conference championships because I think Houston's locked in. I think that so Iowa State, if they're let's see how healthy they are. If Iowa State makes a run in the Big 12 tournament and wins that, I don't know that 3 SEC teams are getting a 1 seed. I don't believe 3 SEC teams need a 1. I don't think. Look, I am of the belief the SEC is not nearly as good as everyone's saying it is right now. And I just think it's the SEC has a lot of good teams. I don't think there's a great team in college basketball, and the SEC is by a country mile the deepest conference in college basketball. I don't know that there's an elite team this year, but I think if you beat Bama this weekend, I think that you probably, and you get to Saturday, I think you're in. But I think you probably need to get to Saturday if you're Tennessee to be able to make sure you lock down that 1 seed because you don't know what's going to happen with some of these other conferences, right? St. John's runs a rough shot through the Big East tournament, but Tennessee gets knocked out in their first game in the SEC tournament. I don't know that the Bama game is going to save them. If Iowa State knocks off Houston and runs all the way through the Big 12 tournament, I don't know that just one of the Bama games going to be enough. So I still think you have work to do, but you're in the driver's seat.
All right, well, I'm going to push back a little bit, and here's why. One, it's not just if they beat Bama, it's if they win out. Now, you assume they'll win at Ole Miss. They'll beat South Carolina at home a week from Saturday. So the kicker will be Ole Miss on the road. Can be a tough game. But if they win out, I think they get a number 1 seed no matter what happens in the conference tournament because, Will, I think you are thinking too highly of the work ethic of this selection committee. I think they set their seedings before the conference tournaments begin, and they only alter it if someone wins the tournament who gets an automatic bid who wasn't going to get it. I've seen that too many times, which is why I don't know how you feel about this, Will, but that Tennessee-Mississippi State game in last year's SEC tournament, I'm not saying Tennessee threw the game, but Rick Barnes basically said, jack a bunch of threes. If they go in, they go in. If they don't, we go home and we prepare for the NCAA tournament. I think that was his strategy. I think they have shown the last 3 years that they don't base any seeding on the conference tournament whatsoever. What are your thoughts on that?
That may be true. It may be true. There's a lot of laziness in selection committees. So your point is incredibly valid. It could happen. I like the last time we had 3 seeds, 3 teams from one conference that were 1 seeds. I was like Patrick Ewing, like it was just elite teams.
These days, I love that.
I mean, it was like it's. I mean, those were just ridiculously elite teams. There might not be an SEC starter or an NBA starter in the SEC right now. Like not on Tennessee's team, not on Auburn's team. The conference, Asa Newell's probably the best bet. So I would like to think like quality matters, but you have a good point. It might not.
And also, let's not forget this, though. If Tennessee wins out, there wouldn't have to be 3. There could be 2 because I would assume Auburn and Tennessee would be the 1 seeds because I think in the Nets, Tennessee, even though they have 1 more loss than Florida, they're actually ahead of Florida in the net rankings right now. So
that could happen. Yeah. That's a really good point. Now what is the will the committee go by that alone or how will they run it? But your point is unbelievably valid, Caleb. So I think you may have convinced me that they're going to be lazy. So there's that.
Well, yeah, and so if you're Rick Barnes, Will, do you exert that much effort in the SEC tournament? I mean,
I would. I would try to play. The biggest thing I'm trying to do if I'm Tennessee is I'm trying to get some level of offensive efficiency. I think this is outside of something crazy happening. The Grant, the Admiral years, Tennessee could have won the national title, but things would have to break their way. Guys would have to shoot better than they normally do outside. Last year's team, you could. Dalton was going to have to go for 40 again, whenever he played UConn and Purdue, and get some help for you to be able to beat those teams because those teams were elite. This year, I don't think there's ever been a better chance for Tennessee to win a national championship in basketball. I don't believe you can do that running that old Gene Katie, Kirk Ferentz version of basketball that Rick Barnes has been doing the last few weeks. I think that it's good to win games. Don't get me wrong. Winning is winning, and you're not going to lose your mind over winning, and I get why he's doing what he's doing. You started this non-conference season playing in space, and it looked like the Boston Celtics in the playoffs last year where you would push the ball up court, whether it was a make or a miss. Guys would get into their spacing immediately, couple quick passes, either somebody have an open 3, somebody cut to the basket. You brought in Igor Milicic because he plays in space. You brought in Chaz Lanier because he plays in space. And I know you've had 2 injuries to JP Estrella and Cameron Carr's gone, but you're still 8-9 deep. Like you played 9 guys against A&M. You're 8 deep. There aren't going to be 10 teams in the entire 68 team field who go more than 8 deep on a regular night. Play in space, because you cannot win a national championship unless you have an NBA starter who scores 20 points a game, and Tennessee does not. Nobody else in this day and age, you go home early when you play games in the 60s. That's just what it is. So if I was Tennessee, I would be trying to work on being more efficient offensively, because when Tennessee loses, we all know what the story is. It's the 2 guards, you play super slow. You're trying to win like Mark Stoops tries to win football games, and your guards shoot you out of games. And that's what's going to happen if you don't, to me, play in space where you can get everybody else with the team more involved. It also just seems Chaz Lanier is so much better when he plays in space than when they slowly drive it up. And he has to have a night like he had against A&M for Tennessee to be able to beat good teams. But I think when they play in space, I think they could win the whole thing. And I don't know if I've ever believed that about a Tennessee basketball team in my lifetime.
I'm a firm believer, and I said this on your show, that Tennessee is viewed as, and by the way, David says, like and subscribe, y'all. Please hit that thumbs up as Will West from the Sports Animal joins us every afternoon from 3 to 7. I'm a firm believer that for one of 2 reasons, and I'll give you a couple, Tennessee's viewed as a football school, or Tennessee has historically flopped in the tournament, that they don't get the benefit of the doubt. In other words, if they should be a 1 seed, they're oftentimes a 2 or 3. I've seen them projected to be a 3 or 4 and fall to a 7 or 8. And the other factor is you've got Rick Barnes there. So second round Rick, if you want to call him that, I just don't think the selection committee, when it comes down to it, will give Tennessee the benefit of the doubt. Am I onto something, or is that conspiracy time?
I think Caleb's probably more right in that they'll lazily put Tennessee at the top. I also think, look, the one thing we got to remember, they're not watching these games, right? Like, that's something I feel like I learned this year, and I've suspected it. And then when I watched the college football playoff situation play out, I'm like, oh, these dudes aren't watching games. Because think about how long it takes to watch games. You can't be a sitting athletics director, and you're not an 80-year-old retiree, and you're sitting there watching 25, 35 hours a week of basketball games. You're not doing it. So I do think there's a level of laziness that will, or groupthink that steps in, but it's just it's permeated college sports total. I mean, Travis Hunter winning the Bednarik Awards, the literal stupidest thing I've ever seen in my entire life, and you know what I mean. And my people are hillbillies, so we've done some dumb things, but there is this groupthink that has happened lately where I think Caleb is probably right, where the lazy thing's going to happen. And I think that Tennessee's ranked here. Let's just Tennessee's net ranking, put them as the 1 seed, because otherwise you'd have to watch games and actually do your job.
Yeah, well, let's throw this out there. I get if you're Tennessee, you never had a 1 seed, you want to make history. But Dave and I had a debate 2 weeks ago and settled this with us. If I'm Tennessee, I'd rather be a 2 seed playing in the Atlanta bracket than a 1 seed playing in the Washington bracket, honestly. Just because home court advantage.
I don't know that matters that much, but the one thing that I've looked at, like as far as location, I don't know if location would matter to me as much, especially with this team as old as they are. But the one thing that and fans, it'd be good for fans for that to happen. That 5 line, when I'm looking at bracketologies, if Lenardi and Palm and those guys are right, that 5 line looks rough right now. That 7-10 matchup looks a lot, especially some of those 10 seeds. I feel like if there's one place that it seems like everyone's underseeded, like there was one on last weekend that was Tennessee played the winner of Oregon and BYU. I don't want any part of BYU if I'm Tennessee, because my guards, like, if somebody else is hitting 3, my guards like to go match, and BYU hit 18 threes 2 nights ago. Like, I don't want any part of that. So I think from the matchup standpoint, it might be better for them to be a 2 seed. If you can get the 1 seed, to me, you go get the 1 seed and then play it out. I don't know that the location's going to matter as much, but because again, to me, it's just, is Tennessee going to play efficient, 2000s offensively, or are we going back to the 1980s? If we're going back to the 80s, they're going home. And that's just what it is at the end of the day, unless they get a lot of help when it comes to the teams that they face.
What you're saying is Will is disrespecting the legacy of Gene Hackman because he doesn't want the Hoosiers offense.
That crap ain't working.
I don't want to go there. Michael, by the way, says Hooker sits on the screen while Caleb and Will West drinking something sour from his face. It's tea, and I'm picking at my nose. I'm insecure because I have a zit on the end of my nose, Will.
Nobody can tell.
Really?
Yeah.
I look like a drunk from the Christmas Carol or something.
No, it's nobody can. Yeah, but you never like in this day and age of streaming. It's kind of whatever. The fact that I don't have pajamas on for you guys right now is a win.
It has evolved throughout the week. Caleb is seeing this thing on the end of my notes. It's gotten bigger, and now it's a little bit more focused down. So I'm glad. I think Chaz Lanier has been underappreciated. He was the SEC Player of the Week 3 times. Dalton Connect was it 4 times. Dalton Connect averaged about 4 points more per game. If Dalton Connect isn't playing for the Vols last year, I think Chaz Lanier is a guy that Tennessee fans would really gravitate towards, but he's playing in the shadow.
One, he's playing in the shadow. 2, he's playing. It's almost like playing out of position. This is almost like you go get, and he's not that good, but I'm trying to think of, you go get Josh Allen and you make him run the triple option, right? Like that's what you're Joe Burrow and you make him run the triple option. No, this makes sense. Like how you're using these, how they're using these players. And part of it's this, Barnes is who he is, right? Like defense is what he does. Also, this team's so good defensively. Like, I get it. You want to win every game, and this probably gives you the best chance to lose a game or two. But we all know who Barnes is, too, and that, man, he could open this thing up and play in space, but you're going to give up 70 points, 71 points. You're going to score 85 instead of scoring 60. And I just think that it's very, like Brent Venables, like we've seen him with Oklahoma, where when he had Jeff Levy as his offensive coordinator, you go play Cincinnati, you beat them to death, letting Levy run his offense, and Butch Jones is crying on the sideline. Then you get into a close game, and you're like, wait a minute, slow this down. We got to protect my defense. Barnes needs to protect his defense. Barnes has got some Venables, and it's why, look, I think the second-round rig thing is unfair, but it's why he has that moniker is because he wants to win with defense, and people who try to win games in the 60s go home early. The problem is what you saw in that second Kentucky game. Kobe Brea hits 2 shots with a hand in his face, and all of a sudden you lose. That's just what it is. You're playing a close game, trying to play in the 60s. One guy hits 2 threes. That's 6 points. You then have to bring your defense out, and it leads to a lob, 8-point swing, and that's what it comes down to. You have one bad shooting night. They have a good shooting night, and you're done. So, which is why they get the 16 seeds or 1 seeds we've seen lose the 16 seeds. It was teams that play games in the 60s, and another team hit threes on them, and that's what happened. So, to me, I think that Chaz is having to play in a way that he should not have to play, and it's very Alvin Kamara, run him with inside zone all day long with Alvin Kamara. It's very similar to that. So I think he's very, very, very good, but he would be even better if you played him like you were planning to use him when you brought him in.
Let me ask you this real quick though. Let me ask you, bank on it. Tennessee makes it past the Sweet 16. And it's brought to you by Commercial Bank.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions.
You banking on it past the Sweet 16?
No, not at all. Not even close. Not even close.
I'll flip a coin for it, but I'm not going to bank on it.
That's what it's do I believe this team can go 3 games without the guards shooting them out against if they play quality opponents? No, you get the right draw. We watched what they did to LSU. They were awful against LSU and suffocated them. And so they can go suffocate mediocre teams. So if you get the right draw, could they get there? Yeah. Or if you start working the ball inside out again, playing in space, yeah, I believe they could get there. But if it's just you're trying to win games in the 60s and it's just whether or not Zakai, who's not a good shooter, hits a lot of 3-pointers, that's not a winning proposition for me. And I'm going to say absolutely not.
Well, the only pushback I want to have on this before you go is that, like, having listened to Rick Barnes talk a couple of days ago, are we sure that it's him not letting Chaz Lanier play this way and Chaz Lanier just not choosing to play this way? I mean, Rick Barnes seems very frustrated with Chaz Lanier's lack of aggression. We're talking about Chaz Lanier literally passed up a shot on a play that was drawn for him to shoot at the beginning of the second half against Texas, which scoring guards don't do.
No, and again, slow it down the half court. I think what he wants him to do is get tougher and not need to be more of such a modern player, not need to play in space. He wants to get tougher and in the half court, lower shoulder drive, and you'd like to see that. And I think that Chaz could be better. What Barnes said afterwards, I hope is hyperbole, because if he really wants 7 or 8 more shots out of Chaz Lanier, like it, yeah. I mean, that's what he just wanted to stand there and jump shoot with the hand worth the ball side to side twice, and he shoots 8 more threes or 4 more threes and drives 4 times and does a fadeaway. That's not a winning proposition, but
well, maybe he could just snowbird and not play defense.
Yeah, I don't. I mean. Instead it ends up being Philip Seymour Hoffman. You know what I mean? Like Kobe, raindrops, and they're just clank, 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 and that's what it ends up being for Tennessee for a lot of games. I would say though, to your point, Caleb, to what Barnes, I agree with you that's what Barnes wants. He wants him to be a guard that's physical in the half court, will be Allen Iverson, and is willing to play ugly basketball, and will drive and put his shoulder into somebody, will get in the lane and draw contact. I just think that's not who he is. And so you're asking, it's definitely not who Milicic is. And we've seen when they play in space, man, Meshack's better when they play in space. Like, he's just better offensively when they play in space. You got to be willing to give up 70 points a game, not 60. And I don't know that Rick Barnes is willing to do that. I think he's been concerned about his team's legs. But look, and I know I keep using football analogies for basketball. Ohio State, they were worried about their team's legs. Ryan Day was. They try to make it more. They end up going super conservative. They lose to Michigan, and then Ryan Day says, all right, to heck with your legs. We're just going to open it up. I think Tennessee needs to do that, is to open it up. And I don't know if you have enough games to be able to polish that kind of play right now. I just also think Chaz is never going to, like, he's just not going to be that. So you're asking him, it's kind of asking him to be a fish out of water or a square peg in a round hole.